Hello and welcome to another episode of the Expanse Abridged Podcast series. Today I got chapter 48, which is a Miller chapter of the first book in the series, Leviathan Wakes. So the last time with our boy Miller, he was on a belter ship, like a little flotilla of ships, on the way back to Eros. The context is obviously Eros is now full of vomit zombies, was what they were called, and is full of protomolecule and is heading kind of towards Earth or towards somewhere central. And the Belters are kind of got a plan, which is put a load of bombs on the outside to irradiate the surface so no one can go near. So no other people can kind of get the protomolecule, or it can cause any more shenanigans. And that's kind of holding people off. But the long-term plan, as in like in 2 days' time, they're going to yeet the Nauvoo, which is the big Mormon ship, into the side of Eros and knock it into the sun and get rid of the protomolecule forever. This is to both kind of save humanity and be the good guys, but also they have the only protomolecule sample, or Holden does, but no one else can have samples, no one else can do another Eros incident, and yeah, the good guys win. It's basically the plan. And Miller is on his way with the flotilla to strap bombs to the outside of Eros under kind of the idea of being the guy to stop beast security. So if any of the monsters come out from inside the ship, Eros, he'll get rid of them. Doesn't really say how. In reality, it's more his kind of way of letting go. He wants to go be with Julie. Julie's there, and he's going to kind of see her, stroke kill himself, stroke hang out. And it's his way of kind of checking out of the book, because obviously he knows the book coming to an end, so he's got to kill himself, and also just kind of check out of what he's been up to. So he joined with Miller, and he's listening to the Eros feed, which has been talking for ages. It's saying, you are and you aren't, you are and you aren't. And Miller's been just lying there for days on end at high G, listening to that. And he's been alternating between the Eros feed, which is just nonsense, and the the news of Protogen kind of coming out, so their involvement. And they've gone, it wasn't us, it was us, but it doesn't matter, claiming defense, etc. But the whole point of Protogen's involvement coming out and doing all the shenanigans and kind of starting all this conflict, particularly all the way back at the Canterbury and the Mars Belt Earth War, is the Martian Navy has slowed its burn back towards Mars, where Earth had been laying a blockade, and Earth's now got a power struggle between like pro-Protogen people and anti-Protogen people. And anyway, so that's kind of the background, what's going on in the wider universe. But with Miller, he's been listening to Eros, and he's noticed patterns or structures appearing in the feed. So I've had the feed now for I'd say 20 odd chapters or so. And Diogo, who's a belter we met a while ago, was listening to kind of dance rap that had been made from it. I know people were trying to figure out what it was, be bird noises or talking. But Miller's now starting to notice patterns, which we haven't really had patterns in the same way before. And specific tendencies, he says. Start saying stuff. But anyway, then also the ship kind of jutters, and in that process, it's then releasing the bombs to kind of attach to the side. They're flipping the ship, and they're going to so they've obviously been burning towards the asteroid. Now they slow down, and they kind of get to the final part as we join Miller. So they're going to dock. So it's the airlocks pointing towards the ship's down. The pilot had to grapple with the spinning skin of Eris's belly first. The spin gravity made what had been the ceiling, now the new floor. So obviously they had been kind of with the engine towards Eros, and they flipped to try and get onto it, and it's all the space kind of shenanigans. And some belters are joking about how they're all going to die, and Miller's thinking the kid who keeps making that same joke for many days is going to get hit with a crowbar. And he suits up and get ready to go on the surface. And obviously the last time we saw Miller in a spacesuit was Rocinante, so he kind of remarks how high-tech and advanced the Rocinante stuff is, because it's Martian gear, compared to the Belter's motley third-hand clothes. Basically their equipment's shite, and it smells like sweat and someone else's, and is really damaged. Julie's whispering in his head still, you belong with me, and it would be getting stronger now as he's getting closer to where Julie's body actually is, because she's still in that hotel last we saw her. Anyway, he hops onto. He's thinking, I'm nearly done, and he's kind of talking more or articulating more about his kind of suicidal ideation at this point, saying certain that he wasn't going to leave. He'd been a cop for too long, and the idea of trying to reconnect to humanity again filled him with the pre-sentiment of exhaustion. He was here to do the last part of his job, and then he was done. And so Miller really is quite sad at this point in time, is the main thing to remember. He was very sad a few chapters ago, obviously when he got broken up with Holden, because I think ultimately he quite like Holden, and he's just a bit sad, but he's kind of, because he's accepted the sadness, he's almost a bit giddy at the idea of his final thing. So they kind of get onto Eros, they've docked, and they're going to strap the bombs up. As they're doing so, two other ships are doing polar landings, so where there's no spin gravity, because you get the Coriolis effect, so everyone feels dizzy when they're at the equator. At the tops there's no spin in that direction, as normal gravity, so up there they're strapping more bombs, and there must be more ships on the equator kind of strapping even more. And the idea is the bombs have to be very, very precise in terms of where they're placed on the planet, because you need to distribute all the energy around the planet so no one can hop in the area between two bombs where there's enough radiation to drop. But also they can't be too close together or too powerful, because then you'll crack the thing open. There'll be proton molecule everywhere. And basically, I think the idea is it's very tense up until Miller. Everyone else leaves basically. So the ship lands. They have to move a bit. Some drones drag it. It kind of goes on for a little bit. But they work fast to place the ship, arm the bombs, and fit the security codes. Everyone tacitly aware of the great missile that had been the Nauvoo speeding towards them. So they keep going through that, and because nothing comes out the airlock, Miller kind of just stands and watches and just kind of gives encouragement. And then when they're finally done, a transport appears to carry away all the other crew, and the ships remain so they can kind of transmit the radio signals between other ships. And also because Miller needs somewhere to hang out and have a nap. He's old, he needs his granddad nap before he goes and kills himself. So Diogo says, come on, we're going to leave when the other ship arrives, and Miller goes, I'm not coming. Sake, says Diogo, so I've decided I'm staying here. There was a moment of silence. Miller had been waiting for this. He had prepared his arguments. He would only be going back to Tycho Station as a political pawn for Fred Johnson's negotiations. He was tired and old in a way that years didn't describe. It's kind of like Bilbo Baggins with butter spread over too much toast. He'd already died in the Eros once, and he wanted to be here to finish it. He'd earned that much. Diogo and the others owed it to him. He waited for the boy to react to try and talk him out of it. All right then, Diogo said. Buono morte. Buono morte, Miller said, and the universe was silent. So it's just like a typical Pelter thing, where it's like, if you know a guy's made his mind up, there's no point convincing him. So Diogo, who's like 16 at this point, with his silly haircut as we last saw him, is like, okay, cool, the old man wants to kill himself, that's fine by me. So the other ships leave, they go off, and Miller watches the big plume of the engine exhaust go gold and white and pull away until it's a star again, with the only other stars in the sky you can see being the Rocinante and the two ships that the Rocinante is scaring off, that being the old Corvette and a science ship, which we talked about last chapter with Holden. It's going to be fine, Julie said. I know, Miller said. He's still talking to her. He needed to be with her for just a few more hours, and then they would be safe. They would all be safe. It was enough. Miller found himself smiling and weeping, the tears tracking up from his eyes and into his hair. He stood silently for almost an hour, then turned and made his slow, precarious way back to the sacrificed ship, down the airlock and into the dim belly. He strips naked, has a nap, and he says he plays some old pop songs he liked to listen to when he was a kid, so he sleeps very well. When he dreamed he'd found a tunnel at the back of his old hole in Ceres, and that meant he would at last be free. Which is kind of sad and kind of fitting. Just finally an escape from his miserable life of being a strange man with a cute little hat. Although we haven't had a description of his hat in a little while. Anyway, then he wakes up, sees there's only the other ships in the night sky have kind of gone away a bit more, so Holden's won, that's good news. The Nauvoo's only due in a few hours, and the OPA is, people Earth and Mars are pissed because the OPA they've figured out what they're doing with Eros. As we follow them through, so Miller pops outside, he gets his suit on, the sky above him turned, and the Nauvoo rose from the horizon like the sun. So you can see the big engine exhaust flowing out behind the Nauvoo. With this tiny dot in the middle that's coming towards him. If he'd done the math right, the Nauvoo's impact site would be at the centre of Eros' major axis, and Miller would be able to see it when it happened. The giddy excitement in his chest reminded him of being young. It would be a show. And he says he may record it, and he realises, no, this is his and Julie's final moment. The massive glow of the Nauvoo filled a quarter of the sky now, and the full circle of it was free of the horizon. The aerosphere soft murmur shifted to something more clearly synthetic, a rising, spiralling sound that reminded him for no particular reason of the green sweeping radar screens of ancient films. So again, that point where as the Nauvoo is getting closer and closer, all of a sudden Eros starts doing the radar, and I like this a lot because it's Eros has all its knowledge, the people it's kind of eaten and subsumed into those vomit zombies, and it's kind of got their brains. That's why the feed's throwing out nonsense. So as it's kind of getting attacked or something's coming towards it, it does like the typical human imagery of what you think you would scan for the threat, which is the human radar, or the green radar screens you see on like sonar or fighter jets. We get some comments on how the Nauvoo is going so fast, anyone inside would be turned to pulp, only machines could survive it. Fast enough, that was all that mattered. There, in the centre of that fiery blue, Miller saw a dark spot, no more than a dot of a pencil tip. When he closed his eyes, the light pressed red through his lids. When he opened them again, the Nauvoo had length, shape. It was a needle, an arrow, a missile. a fist rising from the depths. For the first time in memory, Miller felt awe. Eros shouted, "Don't you fucking touch me." Slowly, the blue of the engine fire changed from a circle to an oval to a great feathery plume, the Nauvoo itself showing silver in rough profile. Miller gaped. The Nauvoo had missed. It had turned. How would you turn something that big, moving that quickly, so abruptly that it would veer off between one breath and the next without also tearing the ship apart? Miller looked at the stars as if there was some answer written on them, and to his surprise there was. The sweep of the Milky Way, the infinite scattering of stars was still there, but the angles had changed. For the Nauvoo to change course at the last minute without falling apart would have been impossible, and so it hadn't happened. Eros was roughly 600 cubic kilometres. Before Protogen, it had housed the second largest active port in the belt, and without so much as overcoming the grip of Miller's magnetic boots, Eros Station had dodged. Whoa, good stuff. So basically, at the very end of this, you've got Miller, arms out, looking at a big blue light and a tiny dot in the middle, going, finally, I can rest, I can kill myself. And then, because, one, the book's not done, and we all enjoy Miller, he doesn't get to kill himself, and he's got to keep going. And the entire station of Eros, which is 600 cubic kilometres, just basically hops a bit to the left, and the Nauvoo swings right by it, which is quite a fun way to end a chapter. I know I've commented ages ago about the writing style employed in this with kind of sudden, every chapter being like a little cliffhanger to constantly get you reading, and what makes it so good, but it can make it so infuriating. This is definitely one of the best ones. I remember reading this for the first time and immediately being like, right, okay, I have to finish the book tonight. Yeah, very good book. I hope you enjoyed that. It's nice seeing Miller not killing himself, even though he was quite happy about the idea, and also just approaching Molecule doing some proper fucky stuff. So very exciting. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, and I hope you have a lovely week.